disease, war, and poverty. These are some of the images people think about when they conjure up thoughts on Africa, on the African continent. Of course, these things are true. These things are prevalent. These scourges are prevalent in this region of the world. But there's so much more to this. There's so much more to Africa than just these three things. Which is why today I will be discussing my reasoning based on facts on why I decided to come out here, and Tanzania specifically. Right, so first off, the first main point is Africa has the largest growing population in the world. In fact, I believe by the year 2100, 40% of the world's population is going to be African. In fact, I believe right now the average age of many African countries is less than 18. What this means? This means that there is going to be a large population boom, and these people that are going to be born and are already born will place a large demand on food, medical services, education, and any other supporting industry that supports a fast-growing population. And this is exacerbated by the fact that most of these countries they have systems that are underdeveloped. So this is going to place a large strain on the industries that are meant to be there to support local economies. And someone that is able to go in and fix some of the problems that are persistent in many of these African countries, I believe, at the very least, that such individuals that go in and provide solutions in food, medicine, education, whatnot, to help these people, they will be compensated as such. And the second reason why I decided to come out here to Africa, it's that when people think of a world-class education, they normally don't think of it being in Africa where you get a world-class education. This privilege, it normally resides in the West. Of a person that is Western educated, went to a Western university, they are seen as being more highly educated. As such, if a Western educated individual comes out to a less developed part of the world, i.e. Africa, they become a bigger fish in a smaller pond. They're seen as being more credible, and people tend to take them more seriously. And this is based on first-hand experience. Back when I was in Thailand earlier this year, I went to the local universities in Bangkok, and I asked a lot of the professors there in the local universities if I could teach their class. Now, in hindsight, I didn't have much to offer them, and my pitch wasn't that great. But the mere fact that I am an American, educated in an American university, lended me a lot more weight in what I said. And a lot of them took me more seriously than they would have if it was an American school. So that's the reasoning based on that. When you are a Western educated individual, people tend to take you more seriously. And just a side note, when you're Western educated and American, perhaps British specifically, you're going to be a native English speaker, obviously. And English is the de facto lingua franca of the world, and it tends to be the more educated people in non-English speaking countries that speak English as a second language. So if you go in there and you speak English fluently, you are some of that upper classiness, so to speak, of people that are in developing countries. They tend to be speaking English as a second language. You go in there and you speak fluent English. Some of the upper classiness, again, rubs off on you. It makes it seem like you are a more educated individual, whether that may or may not be true. And this lends to more people taking you seriously again, and more opportunities opening up to you. So the combination of these two factors, first one being a booming population in a underdeveloped system, and two being Western educated, which leads to more opportunities opening up to you. This leads me to draw the conclusion that the African continent as a whole, it is the modern equivalent of the American West. And when people think of the American West, they think of people going out to a underdeveloped land, people of drive and ambition, and making something of themselves. And that same concept applies to this concept I'm applying to the African continent in the early 21st century. And another example to back that up, I draw to my experiences in Latin America. While I was walking through countless neighborhoods in many cities in Latin America, I noticed a few patterns. As I was walking through many of these cities, I noticed that the more affluent areas, they tended to be, the people that were in the more affluent areas in Latin cities, they tend to be of European descent. And this, based on my own perception, is because their ancestors, the conquistadors mainly, these were people that were more capable than the people that were already settled in the land before the conquistadors came. And that is the reason why they tend to be in a higher social strata than many of the other non-European people that are there in Latin America. This wealth and privilege was passed down along the generations of these European descendants. And this was the time of the conquistadors. This was 400 or 500 years ago. It took many generations for it to be built up, these structures to be built up by these Europeans. And you think of the American West, a couple hundred years ago. It took time for large cities such as San Francisco, where I'm from, and Seattle, Los Angeles, it took time for these places to be built up. And it didn't happen overnight. I think it's safe to say that now, in the 21st century, technology moves a lot faster than it did in the past. Based on that, I see Africa as a whole like how China was 25, 30 years ago. Now China, back in the 1990s, 25, 30 years ago, China was nothing. It was a backwater country that no one cared about. It was still the thoughts of Mao's China, and we won't get into politics, but a lot of people suffered under that regime. That was still fresh on people's mind, and many people were still being negatively affected by the not so good parts of the Maoist regime. But within 25, 30 years, right now, modern times, 2020, China is the second largest economy in the world. That happened, in the large scheme of things that happened in an instant, 25 years. So I reasoned to myself, why can't that be the case in Africa? Things can change so quickly. And if I'm wrong about this, if I'm wrong that Africa is not the next big thing, well, I can already reasonably infer what can go wrong. Well, next 1 to 2 years of my life, they will not be as well spent as they could have been. And I have 40 to 50 years of productive years after this. So that is not the question. Whether I'm wrong is not the question. The question is, what if I'm right? So I'll end this with a quote. Quote made famous by the American West, which I talked about earlier this year when this Africa thing first hit me. Go west, young man. Go west and grow up with the country.